The rain drummed against my office window like impatient fingers, matching the rhythm of my typing as I finished up another late evening at the firm. At 34, I thought I had life figured out: a successful IT consulting business, a beautiful wife of 6 years, and a comfortable home in the suburbs. My name is Aaron, and I believed in the simple things: hard work, loyalty, and the sanctity of marriage vows. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I packed up my laptop, already planning the surprise dinner I'd cook for Joyce when I got home. She'd been distant lately, working late herself, but I attributed it to stress from her marketing job. Marriage has its seasons, I told myself. We were just in a winter that would eventually give way to spring. Aaron, man, I don't know how to tell you this. His voice cracked like ice under pressure. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. When Kyle finally spoke, his words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. Joyce is at Crystal Globe. She's with another guy, Aaron. Like, really with him. Making out on the dance floor while Paul and Linda are cheering them on. Everyone's watching, man. Everyone. The world tilted sideways. My vision blurred as if someone had smeared Vaseline across my eyes. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand, and for a moment I couldn't remember how to breathe. That's not possible. Joyce is at her sister's place. She texted me earlier. Aaron, I'm looking right at her. Short red dress, the one with the sequins you bought her for your anniversary. She's grinding on some tall guy with a beard. They're not trying to hide it. My legs gave out, and I collapsed into my office chair. The leather squeaked in protest, a sound that would forever remind me of this moment. My chest felt like it was caving in, ribs pressing against my lungs until each breath became a conscious effort. I think it's her ex, Zachary, the one from college she used to talk about. Zachary. The ghost from her past she'd claimed was ancient history. The comparison she'd sometimes make in passing, quickly followed by assurances that those days were long gone. Now I understood why she'd kept his photos in that old shoebox. For memories. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys. The 20-minute drive to Crystal Globe passed in a blur of red lights and racing thoughts. Every traffic light felt like a personal insult, every slow car an obstacle between me and the truth I both needed and dreaded to see. Crystal Globe's neon sign cast sickly pink shadows across the parking lot. The bass line from inside thrummed through the concrete, vibrating up through my shoes and into my bones. I stood at the entrance for a full minute, knowing that once I walked through those doors, my life would be split into before and after. The bouncer recognized me. Joyce and I had been here for New Year's Eve just 4 months ago, kissing at midnight while confetti fell around us like snow. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. The club was packed, bodies moving in the dim light like fish in a murky aquarium. I pushed through the crowd, following the sound of familiar laughter. Paul's distinctive cackle led me to the VIP section, where our supposed friends had gathered for their weekly ritual. Joyce, my wife, the woman who'd promised to forsake all others, was pressed against the man I recognized from old photos. Zachary's hands roamed her body with the familiarity of ownership, while she arched into him like a cat in heat. Her wedding ring caught the strobe lights, a mocking glint of gold against her skin. Paul saw me first. His face went white, and he nudged Linda, who turned and gave me a look of pity mixed with something that might have been satisfaction. They'd known. They'd all known, and they'd chosen their side. She turned at the sound of her name, and for a split second, I saw my wife. The woman who'd cried during our wedding vows, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral, who'd laughed at my terrible jokes for 6 years. Then her face hardened into something I didn't recognize. Aaron. She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. What are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you doing here? My voice carried over the music, and heads began to turn. With him! Zachary stepped forward, puffing out his chest like a rooster, protecting his territory. Look, man, this is between Joyce and you. Don't make a scene. A scene? I laughed, but it came out wrong, hysterical and sharp. My wife is tongue-deep with her ex-boyfriend while our friends watch like it's dinner theater, and you're worried about a scene? Joyce's eyes flashed with something that might have been guilt, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. Aaron, we need to talk. But not here. Not like this. When, then? Between your late nights at the office? During your sister's emergencies that never seemed to exist when I called to check on you, the pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. How long, Joyce? How long have you been making a fool of me? 3 months. 90 days of lies, of coming home to her kisses that tasted like betrayal, of making love to a woman who was already giving herself to someone else. The math of deception is always exact, always cruel. I want a divorce, she said, the words dropping like stones into still water. I'm in love with Zachary. I always have been. You were safe, Aaron. Stable. But I need more than safe. Safe. Stable. The words she'd once used to describe what she loved about me now felt like insults. I'd built my entire adult life around being her safe harbor, her steady ground, and she was discarding it all for whatever temporary thrill stood beside her. Don't come home tonight, I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. Don't come home at all. I turned to Zachary, who was still playing the part of the conquering hero. You think you've won something here? Congratulations. You've won a woman who'll betray 6 years of marriage for a few months of excitement. But understand this. If you set foot on my property, you'll discover why they call it the castle doctrine. The threat hung in the air between us. Zachary's bravado faltered slightly, but Joyce stepped between us. Don't what? Don't react like a man whose wife just publicly humiliated him? Don't feel anything about being betrayed by the person I trusted most? I looked around at our friends, former friends, who'd watched this unfold like spectators at a gladiator match. You all knew. You all watched me make a fool of myself while she was with him. Paul at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. Aaron, man, we didn't want to get involved in... In what? In basic human decency? In loyalty? In friendship? I shook my head. You made your choice. All of you. Remember that. I walked away then, pushing through the crowd with my vision tunneling and my heart hammering against my ribs. Behind me I could hear Joyce calling my name, but her voice sounded like a stranger's. The parking lot air hit me like a slap, cold and sharp after the suffocating heat of the club. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, until my knuckles went white, watching couples stumble out of the club and into each other's arms. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my home office, our home office, surrounded by the artifacts of a shared life, and I planned. The family photos on the desk showed us in happier times, our wedding day, vacations, holidays with relatives. Each image now felt like evidence of my own naivete. By dawn, I had a legal pad filled with notes and a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Joyce wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial about me. I'd built a successful business by being 3 steps ahead of the competition. I knew how to plan, how to strategize, and how to win. My first call was to Douglas Lima, the best divorce attorney in the state, and an old friend from college. Joyce is cheating. I caught her at Crystal Globe last night with her ex. She wants a divorce. The silence on the other end told me Douglas was shifting from friend mode to lawyer mode. How long has it been going on? Good man. My office, 9 o'clock. And Aaron? Don't do anything stupid between now and then. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and began documenting everything. Screenshots of her location data from our shared phone plan. Credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels on days she claimed to be working late. Text messages between her and her sister that didn't add up. The digital age makes liars of us all, but it also makes the truth easier to find. By 7 a.m., I was at the bank. Our joint accounts held $47,000 in savings and $12,000 in checking. All legally mine to withdraw during business, hours before any freeze could be put in place. I cleaned out every account we shared, leaving exactly $1 in each to keep them open. Legal, strategic, and deeply satisfying. My business accounts were already separate, as were my investments and the house, which I'd purchased before our marriage. Joyce had insisted we keep things modern and separate back then. Now her feminist principles were about to bite her in ways she couldn't imagine. Douglas's office smelled like leather and ambition. He listened to my story without interruption, taking notes on a yellow legal pad and nodding at the appropriate moments. She's made several crucial mistakes, he said when I finished. First, she admitted to adultery in front of witnesses. Second, she's been conducting this affair using joint resources. Your money paid for her dates with him. Third, she moved out of the marital home voluntarily. Douglas smiled, and I remembered why he'd never lost a divorce case. It means she's going to learn that actions have consequences. But, Aaron, I need to know how far you want to take this. All the way, Doug. She destroyed 6 years of my life for a few months of excitement. I want her to understand what destruction really looks like. The next few days passed in a blur of strategic planning and careful execution. I had friends from my Marine Reserve days, men who understood loyalty and brotherhood in ways that civilian friends like Paul and Linda never could. Tommy and Marcus arrived at noon on Thursday, bringing boxes and a military precision that would have made our old drill sergeant proud. "You sure about this, brother?" Tommy asked as we stood in my living room, looking at the remnants of my marriage scattered around us. We packed her belongings with the efficiency of a military operation. Her clothes went into boxes, but not before Marcus accidentally spilled coffee on several expensive dresses. Her jewelry went into another box, but the clasps on several necklaces seemed to mysteriously break during packing. Her wedding dress, the beautiful white gown she'd spent months selecting, received special attention. By the time we were done with it, it looked like it had been used as a cleaning rag. "Oops," Marcus said, holding up the soiled, torn fabric. "Guess I'm all thumbs today." The books she'd collected over the years went into boxes, but several seemed to have pages missing. Her makeup collection survived, mostly, though some of the containers appeared to have been opened and contaminated with various household substances. Nothing illegal, nothing that couldn't be explained as accidents during a rushed packing job. "You know," Tommy observed, "moving is such stressful work. Easy to make mistakes when you're emotional." By evening, everything that belonged to Joyce was packed and sitting on the front porch. I changed the locks and had a security system installed. If she wanted her things, she could call and arrange a supervised pickup. Friday morning, I implemented phase 2 of my plan. Douglas had arranged for process servers to visit Joyce at her workplace, the marketing firm, where she'd supposedly been working so many late nights. The papers were served at 10 a.m., right in front of her colleagues and clients, along with a manila envelope containing printed photographs that Kyle had taken the night of my discovery. Phase 3 targeted our mutual friends, who'd chosen to enable and celebrate her betrayal. Paul and Linda ran their small businesses on IT services I provided at friend rates for years. Their contracts were up for renewal, and I decided not to renew them. Professional courtesy meant I gave them 2 weeks' notice before terminating all services and reclaiming the equipment I'd leased to them. "Aaron, man, please," Paul called me that afternoon, panic clear in his voice. "You can't just cut us off like this. All our data, our client files, everything's on your system." "Funny thing about data, Paul, it's only as secure as the relationships that protect it. You chose your side. This is mine. Look, what happened between you and Joyce, that's between you two. Don't take it out on us." "What happened between me and Joyce?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean when my wife publicly cheated on me while you and Linda cheered? When you all participated in humiliating me? That's not between me and Joyce, Paul. That's between me and everyone who decided to be part of it." I hung up and forwarded his panicked voicemails to Linda, along with a note, "Consequences are a bitch, aren't they?" The data wipe was scheduled for Monday morning. They had the weekend to figure out their own IT solutions. The divorce proceedings began 3 weeks later, and Joyce learned her first harsh lesson about consequences. She wanted half of everything: the house, my business, my investments, even my retirement accounts. Her lawyer, a recent graduate with more enthusiasm than experience, walked into Douglas's office expecting a standard 50-50 split. "Your Honor," Douglas addressed the bench with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a case. "My client's wife abandoned the marital home to conduct an adulterous relationship, using joint marital funds to finance her affair. We have documented proof of her infidelity, including photographs and witness testimony." Joyce's lawyer objected, claiming no-fault divorce laws made adultery irrelevant. "While Illinois is indeed a no-fault state," the judge replied, "the court can still consider misconduct when determining asset division and spousal support." "Please continue, Mr. Lima." What Joyce and her lawyer didn't know was that Judge Harrison was my Uncle Robert, my mother's brother, who'd officiated my wedding 6 years earlier. The family connection was perfectly legal, as long as it was disclosed, which Douglas had done in the proper paperwork that Joyce's inexperienced attorney had apparently failed to read carefully. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Douglas continued, "my client's spouse has been cohabitating with her paramour, essentially maintaining 2 households at the expense of the marriage. We believe this constitutes economic waste of marital assets. My client wishes to retain all premarital assets, including the family home which he purchased before the marriage." Additionally, given that Mrs. Aaron has been employed full-time while conducting her affair, and my client has reduced his business income to spend more time maintaining their household, we're seeking spousal support. I had to admire Douglas's creativity. I had indeed reduced my business income by deferring payments and shifting revenue to the following tax year. On paper, I was now the lower-earning spouse, deserving of support. Joyce's face went white as the implication sank in. Not only would she get nothing from the divorce, she'd have to pay me alimony for the next 3 years. "But this is insane!" she shouted, jumping to her feet. "He makes 3 times what I make. His business." "Mrs. Aaron," Judge Harrison said calmly, "please control yourself in my courtroom. According to the financial documents provided, your income exceeds your husband's by a significant margin. The court sees no reason to deviate from standard spousal support guidelines." Her lawyer tried to object, but the math was clear. I'd played the system perfectly, and the system was about to play her. "You bastard," she hissed. "You planned this whole thing. The judge, the income manipulation, all of it." "I learned from the best," I replied calmly. "You taught me that vows are meaningless, that loyalty is for suckers, and that the people you trust most are the ones who will hurt you deepest. So I stopped being trustworthy Aaron and started being strategic Aaron." I handed her a manila envelope. Inside was a letter I'd written to Zachary's employer, a conservative financial firm that took a dim view of employees who destroyed marriages. Along with the letter were copies of the photographs from Crystal Globe and documentation of the affair timeline. You see, Zachary never mentioned he was dating a married woman when he applied for his promotion last month. His boss, being a family values kind of guy, might be interested to know the kind of man he's considering for senior management. Joyce's face crumpled. "Aaron, please, don't destroy his career over this." "I'm not destroying anything, Joyce. I'm just sharing information. What his employer does with it is their choice, just like what you did with our marriage was yours." 2 days later, Zachary was fired. 2 weeks after that, Joyce called me crying. "He left me," she sobbed into the phone. "Zachary left me. He said it was too complicated, that I was too much drama." "What did you expect? You threw away a 6-year marriage for him. A man who'd break up a marriage will eventually break up with you too. Character doesn't change, Joyce." 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I stood in my backyard watching 2 German Shepherd puppies chase each other around the oak tree Joyce had once wanted to cut down. Max and Ruby were siblings from a breeder upstate, and they'd brought more joy into my life than I'd felt in years. The house felt like home again. I'd redecorated, removing all traces of my former life and creating something that was purely mine. The master bedroom became my office, and I moved into the guest room, which I'd converted into a sanctuary with a king-size bed and a view of the garden. My business was thriving. Losing Paul and Linda as clients had been a blessing in disguise. Their drama-filled industries had been more trouble than they were worth. I'd replaced them with contracts from corporate clients who paid better and caused fewer headaches. I'd met her at a coffee shop downtown, where she worked as a freelance graphic designer between her own clients. She was nothing like Joyce. Quiet where Joyce had been loud, thoughtful where Joyce had been impulsive, loyal where Joyce had been. Joyce. Emily knew about my divorce, about the betrayal and the aftermath. She'd listened without judgment when I told her the story, and she'd smiled when I showed her the pictures of Max and Ruby. "You know what I admire about you?" she'd said during one of our early dates. "You didn't let what happened make you bitter. You dealt with it, you moved on, and you built something better." The spousal support payments from Joyce arrived monthly, like clockwork, a regular reminder that actions have consequences. I donated most of the money to a veterans charity, keeping just enough to cover the dog's expenses. It seemed fitting somehow. Paul and Linda's businesses had struggled after losing their IT infrastructure. Linda had called me twice, begging for help, but I declined politely. They'd found other providers eventually, at triple the cost I'd charged them, but their client base had never fully recovered from the disruption. Joyce, according to mutual acquaintances, was working 2 jobs to make ends meet. She'd moved in with her sister after Zachary left, and the sister was apparently growing tired of supporting her. The glamorous life she'd imagined with her college boyfriend had turned into a cautionary tale about grass that seems greener on the other side, but I didn't take pleasure in her struggles anymore. The anger had faded, replaced by something closer to indifference. She'd made her choices, I'd made mine, and we were both living with the consequences. I whistled for the dogs, who came running with the enthusiasm that only puppies possess. As we headed inside, I caught my reflection in the sliding glass door, tanned from weekend hiking trips, smiling genuinely for the first time in months, surrounded by creatures who loved me unconditionally. This was what happiness looked like, not the artificial performance of a marriage built on lies, but the quiet satisfaction of a life built on solid ground. That night, as Emily and I sat on the couch with the puppy sprawled across our feet, I realized something profound. Joyce hadn't destroyed my life. She'd simply revealed that the life I thought I was living had been an illusion. The real Aaron, strategic, resilient, capable of both justice and mercy, had been there all along, waiting for the chance to emerge. "What are you thinking about?" Emily asked, noticing my contemplative mood. "Just how sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened." She smiled and squeezed my hand. "Sounds like you found your peace with all of it." I had. The betrayal that had once felt like the end of my story had simply been the end of one chapter. The chapters that followed, justice, healing, and renewal, were entirely of my own writing. Outside, the evening wind rustled through the oak tree that Joyce had wanted to cut down, its branches strong and deep-rooted, weathering whatever storms might come. Like the tree, I had learned to bend without breaking, to grow stronger in the broken places, and to thrive in seasons both fair and harsh. The man who'd walked into Crystal Globe that night was gone, destroyed by betrayal and reborn in justice. In his place stood someone better, wiser, stronger, and finally truly free. Some stories end with forgiveness. Mine ended with something better. The understanding that some people don't deserve forgiveness, and that's perfectly fine. Justice, served cold and with surgical precision, can be its own form of healing. I'd learned to stop being safe, stable Aaron. Instead, I'd become dangerous Aaron, dangerous to liars, cheaters, and those who mistake kindness for weakness. It was a much better way to live. The puppies stirred in their sleep, Max's paw twitching as he chased dream rabbits through endless fields. Emily shifted closer, her warmth a promise of loyalty that felt authentic in ways my marriage never had. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new chapters in the story I was writing for myself. But tonight, surrounded by love that was freely given and honestly earned, I was exactly where I belonged. The house settled around us with the comfortable sounds of a home at peace. Somewhere across town, my ex-wife was probably lying awake, wondering how her perfect plan had gone so spectacularly wrong. But that was her story now, not mine.